You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, TikTok, you up to bat? Bah! It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we got to do. You got to hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. Elevate more in 2024. Elevate more in 2024. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos, man. Make sure you hit the like button. Also, I got a TikTok playlist. If you into this stuff, you can go binge watch it and all that. We need a new slogan for 2025. So if you got any ideas, drop them in the comments, man. But we back. We got another TikTok compilation. There's a lot of stuff going on with some aliens and stuff recently. So we about to see. You make it to the end of this one, you a real one for real. Make sure you drop that in the comments. Don't forget. Let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad, what's popping? Let's get it.
Aliens are in the ocean, and different Congress and U.S. government officials just
Do your own research.
came out with a whole hearing and just told us everything we needed to know about these UFO sightings. Now, instead of UFOs, they mainly call them UAPs, which is any object that's in the air or sea that can't be immediately unidentified or explained, because they try to avoid the alien stigma of the term UFO. But they literally just had this huge meeting Wednesday, and all four of these men that were the witnesses were like retired people in the Navy and different branches high up in the military and government. And each one of these men talked about different situations with the UFOs underwater. And one of the men talked about how there was an unidentified underwater craft following a U.S. submarine. And he said nothing that they knew of technology-wise could replicate that. And the speed of the object was faster than anything they could think of. He kept saying it was like an underwater torpedo. And this man, I believe his name is Elizondo, he went more in depth about the stuff that's going on more than anybody. Because in this whole hearing, they're telling us this stuff.
Man, what's your thoughts, man? For the aliens to be a conspiracy theory for so many years, and all of a sudden, based off of this, claims made at UFO hearing in Congress, but lack direct evidence. Just tell me your thoughts. Just tell me it's a lot of stuff that go on that we don't know about, that I think they know about. But that's why we here. Let's go.
But they are very cautious at what they say. And he said that there is excessive secrecy. And he said it has been used to hide the fact that we are not alone, and we haven't been alone for a long time. And in this hearing, the people would ask them questions like, do you believe that the government is aware of this stuff? And they all was like, yes. They've been knew what was going on for a minute now. They asked them, do they believe that some people can communicate with them? And they said yes. This whole hearing is actually very crazy because like these are like high up men and branches of the military and like the government. Serious men that I highly doubt would be coming up with some alien stories. And men that actually has families and lives to go back to. And this can be a dangerous topic. And like I said, one slip up could have messed up everything. So they had to be very cautious at what they told us. So that just makes me think like everything that I talk about in the ocean, I just know it's real. That's why I just believe everything in the Bermuda Triangle is a portal. I believe that they're mermaids. What if aliens were mermaids? Like, what if they're in cahoots with each other? Like, people believe that these underwater kingdom creatures are demonic. So we've been in cahoots and we having these demons that's living in our oceans that we swim in. It's a lot, y'all. It is a lot. And they just keep telling us like they had a literal meeting last year about the same topic. Not too many people talked about it. Like they're literally telling us this stuff and people still don't believe. I know some people are like, oh, I have to see it to believe it. Did you see dinosaurs and you believe it? No, you only believe it because they taught us that in school, but you did not see that. The same way they have fossils and stuff, that's how we know that they're true. These people are literally telling us there's actual unknown spacecrafts in our oceans that they have seen, and there's some parts of it hidden. Is that not enough for y'all to believe, y'all? But my thing is, why are they now? Why are they now telling us this stuff? What is happening? What are they preparing us for? Because at the end of the day, they told us. They can't say they did not tell us. It's the law of nature or something. They gotta tell us. They gotta tell us. But let me know what y'all think about the fact that these aliens could be in our oceans. And let me know if y'all watched the video too. It's actually very interesting.
At the end of the day, they go in.
What do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir. genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out. Do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Elizondo, in regards to these aircraft being piloted by whatever they might be, non-human biologics, would you agree that it's likely that they are being piloted by some mind-body connection?
Ma'am, I think it is safe to presume here that they are being intelligently controlled because some cases seem to anticipate our maneuvers, and in other cases they seem to I came across an email where the word "stalked" was used in a very secure email between Navy officers discussing their ships being pursued by a UAP.
In our previous panel, we had Grush, and he had testified to say that some of these were interdimensional beings. Can you speak on that at all?
The human body can withstand about 9 G-forces for a short period of time before you suffer negative biological consequences, blackouts and ultimately redouts and even death. Comparison, our best technology, the F-16, which is one of its older platform, but one of our most highly maneuverable aircraft, manned aircraft, can perform about 17 or 18 G-forces before you start having structural failure, meaning that the airframe begins to disintegrate while you're flying. The vehicles we're talking about are performing in excess of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Gs.
What?
Mr. Gallaudet, I think your testimony has been pretty clear, but would you please reiterate that do you believe UAPs pose a threat to pilots? Excuse me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. They were threatening Navy pilots during the exercise that I was, my people were involved with in 2015. And it's my understanding they're risking pilot safety, commercial and military today.
Well, considering, and I understand that there's a need in some cases to keep certain technologies secret, but you believe that it is posing a threat to our personnel, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I think it's reasonable to conclude that if there's a threat to our personnel who are serving our country faithfully, that there be oversight.
100%, Congressman. And in fact, that's the one thing that we've not talked about enough during this hearing is the fact that the government executive branch not sharing with Congress what it knows about UAP infringes on your legislative and oversight responsibilities to such an extent that's very concerning. I mean, what else are we, if you look at national security or intelligence or foreign affairs or appropriations, you all have oversight and legislative responsibility regarding those. This UAP issue may be the greatest issue of our time, and it's being hid from you.
Well, I mean, and to your point, I think we've seen over the decades that we have certain adversaries like China, like Russia, that technologically speaking are not as advanced as us, that they lack some of the lethality that we have, and that we've seen that they've gone after our technologies and in some cases succeeded, in particular with missile technology. And so, again, my concern, whether this technology emanates from us or otherworldly, that we know that we possess it. And where's the accountability? Where are the stopgaps? What are the guarantees that if this were to fall in enemy hands that it isn't immediately weaponized against us? And I'll say this, it is clear from my experience and what I've seen that there is something out there. The question is it ours? Is it someone else's? Or is it otherworldly? And Madam Chairman, I would posit that as the legislative body, as the regulatory body, we must know. And anyone who prevents us from gaining access to that information,
even the government,
I would consider that criminality. Because we have U.S. personnel who may very well be in harm's way. We have technology that ultimately may threaten our very existence. Without
Man, this is spicy.
Confirmation that UAPs are real came to me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast. It included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, and this exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a 4-star admiral who at the time was also my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on Navy's secure network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue."
Oh.
The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve this soon, we are going to have to shut down the exercise."
Wow.
Attached to the email is what is now known as the GoFast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy F-A-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects.
Whoa, they sent the email out like, yo.
Do you know how large an offshore oil derrick is? They're huge, right?
Yeah.
They're like almost like a small city, right? They're like one city block. They're huge. They're enormous things. There is a video that shows one of these objects underwater that goes by. Speed was calculated between 450 and 550 knots underwater.
Whoa.
And it was bigger than the offshore derrick that it was passing.
What?
As you could see in the video, the offshore derrick, and you could see this thing zip right by it.
So that's a lot of them, right? A lot of them are reported as being transmedium.
Right. So that exactly. Why do we use the term UAP, right? Now it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon because it's all domain. Initially it was UFO,
Right.
unidentified flying object.
Right.
And for several reasons they changed the name. One of them, not just because of stigma like people think, but because the word flying object means flight. And
Right.
you have to have wings to fly. That's flight. And these things don't have wings. So that term, we're not even sure is even accurate anymore because they're not necessarily flying. We see them underwater. We see them
Wow.
super high altitude. So the term was changed to unidentified aerial phenomenon. But again, that did not encompass all the observations we were seeing. So now the term UAP, I think the latest description of it is unidentified anomalous phenomenon to help describe this multi-domain or transmedium characteristic that we are beginning to see and record that these things can do.
This is wild.
So at nuclear missile bases in the upper Midwest, for example, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered submarines are all getting buzzed by these objects, including underwater. And in a number of cases, these things have landed on military bases, and servicemen have approached them. Like, what is this thing? There's this like giant glowing thing on the base. And they approach and they get traumatic brain injury. They get brain damage or they're killed. And he studied their brains. This is all totally real. This is not the Department of Defense, dude. And they've
This is wild. This is wild right here.
all had this damage from some kind of powerful energy that we cannot identify. So then this guy's like, wow, he's just a scientist. He never believed in UFOs. He's like, this is real. I cannot believe this is real. This is like crazy. He's just doing research on it. He's still at Stanford. And it turns out that actually, yes, these things have been shot down and crashed, and the U.S. government has the wreckage, and it's being held by defense contractors, Raytheon, Lockheed, which are big independent companies, but they work for the U.S. government. They're really part of the Department of Defense, but they're separate. Sunshine laws don't apply to them. You can't actually get information from them. It's a very tricky way to hide information. And they have the wreckage from these crafts. And I'm like, really? Are we positive these aren't like advanced Russian or Chinese? No, of course not.
Man.
UFO sighting. In November 2024, the Pentagon released its latest UAP report, revealing 757 sightings between May 2023 and June 2024.
700? Oh, hell no! 700?
While many were identified as drones or balloons, 21 cases remain unexplained, designated as true anomalies. One incident involved a near miss between a commercial airliner and a cylindrical object near New York City, described by the crew as moving silently and with no heat signature. The Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, is actively investigating this event. During the same week, Congress held a hearing on UAPs, where whistleblowers claimed knowledge of secret crash retrieval programs and advanced technologies. One witness testified that some crafts defy the laws of physics and aren't attributable to any nation. These aren't ours and they're not theirs, he stated. Follow for more details.
It's gonna start coming out now.
Ever since I heard that alien shit, I can't stop thinking about it. And this is gonna be my second video, but they come from underwater. Now they got me thinking a whole bunch of shit. It's like, I don't even want to go on cruises no more. Ooh. And I always said this, like, you could go into space, but you never, ever been to the bottom of the ocean. Like, you can't explore the whole ocean, but you can go into space. I'm not gonna lie, this shit is really gonna have me up all night for a couple of nights, because, like, I need to know what's going on. Like, why you can't talk to dolphins? And I know that I don't even got nothing to do with it. It really don't. But let me ask you this. What if we are the aliens? Like us.
Yeah.
We the aliens. Like, we just came here from somewhere. Who made us? Because
who made us?
If there's aliens and they come from wherever they come from, who made them? What's going on? Just think about all the sightings, like people seeing them on a regular basis. This don't bother y'all? But I guess, all right, no problem. They gotta be playing. Everything is a joke to y'all. This shit's serious. 2024 been a lot, man.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you characterize UAPs?
An enigma, sir, and a frustration. We're talking about technologies that can outperform anything we have in our inventory. And if this was an adversarial technology, this would be an intelligence failure eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude.
Are there classified Department of Defense materials related to UAPs that you believe could be safely disclosed to the public without compromising national security?
Yes, sir, I do. I would never, ever try to endorse providing some sort of information that could compromise what we call a blue force technology or capability. But I do believe there's a lot of information regarding this topic, and I've been very vocal about it, that should be shared not only with the public, but most importantly, with members of Congress.
Are you familiar with my friend David Grush?
Absolutely, sir. I had the privilege and honor of working with him myself several years ago at U.S. Space Force.
Last year, as you know, he testified that the U.S. has run a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Are there UAP programs operating without proper congressional oversight?
100%.
What are they?
Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session.
I know you said that. And a lot of people are frustrated with those kind of answers, but we're asking those kind of questions so you all know what the heck we're up against. You also mentioned in your opening statement that the Pentagon's Public Affairs Office employs a psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for UAP-related inquiries. Why the heck would they do that?
Sir, that's a great question. I would ask the Pentagon. There's a long history here of that individual providing misleading and false information to the public through various news outlets and media outlets in order to discredit this topic. I've personally been victim to it. We have the documentation to substantiate where this information has been absolutely inaccurate, that has been provided time and time again, and it turns out that that individual was also working with former leadership of Aero at the time as well.
And we punish them by giving them multi-million dollars more than they ask for every year.
Everybody's freaking out because they just confirmed that aliens are in the ocean, but I honestly knew something was up with the ocean the second that I heard that we have discovered more of space than what we have the ocean on Earth. I always wanted to know, how is it scientifically possible that we have discovered more of space that has multiple different planets and multiple planets that we're still discovering till this day that we haven't even stepped foot on than our own ocean? I'm no astronaut, but I heard it takes years and years to get to different places in space, and then we have black holes where we don't even know where the hell those go to. And like I said, we've never stepped foot on these multiple different planets. So how in the world do we know more about space than our ocean on our one planet called Earth? That's absolutely wild to me. There's multiple different planets and we are only one planet, and we don't know more about something that's just on our planet than we do the whole damn galaxy. It really don't shock me that they're saying that aliens are in the ocean, because we know more about the space where we thought that they came from. But does this mean that they're not even really aliens. They're saying that they live underneath the ocean, right? So you really wouldn't call them aliens if they're not from outside space or whatever the hell you want to call it.
That's a good point.
2024 is wild, man. I can't. I'm done.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public.
Yes, sir.
There we have it. Aliens exist because apparently former US government employees, which is the person you just saw then, just admitted that there is so much evidence that has been hidden by the federal government from the public about UAPs. Now, UAPs used to be UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and now it's UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenons. Now, it's the same thing, spacecrafts in the air that are being, hidden away by the government, not just aircrafts, but other alien interactions that we have had on planet Earth have just been, kept under wraps. So this is kind of crazy news, and it's kind of like people at the moment are saying, is this just a massive distraction for something that is coming now that the government are just trying to, keep our eyes away from what's going on? Let me know what you think about this down below.
It's something coming. It's something coming.
All right. Have you specifically had any experience with submersible objects?
Sir, I've no personal experience, but I've had witnesses on submarines come to me and say they've seen on sonar data.
Correct. Okay.
How
would you characterize those, and how do they move?
The one instance that was revealed to me was in the 80s on a nuclear-powered submarine, a ballistic missile submarine, that the object exhibited the characteristics of a Russian torpedo in terms of its speed of movement and closing rate with the submarine, and then it slowed and followed the submarine slowly in its wake for a period of minutes, and then rapidly exited the scene. And nothing that we know of and technology-wise could replicate that.
And the speed of these objects was faster than anything that we have or anybody else has that would be manned. Is that correct?
It was on the order
Underwater.
of a torpedo. So
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. But as it exited,
well, I don't exactly know how fast a torpedo is, but I expect it does better than my old outboard Scott Atwater. So I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
okay. Have you experienced?
He funny a little bit.
They just confirmed aliens are from our oceans, and they have proof of it. In the Oversight Committee hearing that was broadcasted worldwide, 4 witnesses, including a retired Navy commander, confirmed to Congress that non-human higher intelligence exists, and we're in possession of their technology. They said we have UAP material and bioorganic material, and so does every other country, and behind closed doors, they're all in a race trying to reverse engineer the technology that they have. They said
They trying to reverse engineer. They trying to, hey, we got to do what they doing. We got to figure it out. This is wild. This is wild, man.
they have video evidence of them appearing from the oceans all across the world, and they've been here much longer than us. We've seen the UAPs move and react so quickly, and based on their technology, they believe they're being controlled by a mind-body connection. It said that some of these beings appear to be interdimensional, and that a human can withstand up to 9 Gs of force before suffering fatal consequences, but the technology they're working on is producing upwards of 3,000 Gs. That this is only the tip of the iceberg compared to what the government is not telling us, but let me know what you guys think about all of this, and I'll keep you guys updated.
It's gonna be some stuff coming out on this, man.
UFOs are real and aliens are real, but they're not from outer space, and that's according to the top 2 UFO researchers.
Hold on, man. So if these aliens are not from outer space and they from the ocean, what? It was all a lie. Oh, they from outer space? Or are they from outer space but they live in the ocean? I don't know.
After decades-long research. So go to Submarine.com and
so
pray.
Where do they
it's
think
up
they're
there
from
in time.
if they're not from outer space?
They're interdimensional and potentially fallen angels, disguising themselves because they're liars of something like you said can't be proven or disproven. I'm from this galaxy 300 light years away.
This is kind of what Tucker Carlson thinks. He thinks there's a spiritual element to it, and he thinks they've always been here, and he thinks that this is what's kind of documented in the Bible as like good and evil. And
that's it, exactly. I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, the top 2 UFO researchers said UFOs are real, number 1. Number 2, they're not from outer space. And number 3, they're demonic. And that's what I talk about. Where it talks about fallen angels interbreeding with humans, it's talked about in Genesis 6, and creating a race called Nephilim, who were men of renown, world leaders.
Could you...
Man, it's in the Bible.
What's the latest and greatest in UFO information? One of them was those bizarre pyramid-shaped video pyramid
triangle by angle of observation, and in the classified section, it goes into depth that they were pyramids. There's a lot of argument about that publicly, like does it show an optical effect where it's not what it appears? So most are spheres, like with cubes in them. That is the strangeness of it. Most of them are cubes surrounded by a translucent sphere. I've heard of pyramids.
So most of them?
Most of them that are on the East Coast right now with increased frequency and also over war zones. What do they do with like the cubes surrounded by these spheres? Nothing, because they don't look like they have a payload.
And what shape are these ones that have payloads?
Looks like a jellyfish, man.
Like a jellyfish?
Yeah, I don't know. It's stiff, but that about the size of like a big coffee table. That's the one at least that we've fired on recently.
Big coffee, like this desk, maybe?
Yeah, about 10 to 12 feet.
If you're in one of these alien crafts, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see exactly this. Not an exaggeration. Not some type of Hollywood mock-up. From a first-hand witness, exactly what you would find on an alien craft.
And he goes, I got goosebumps. It almost feels like it's gonna work. You take off the hemisphere. Basically, that's like a replica of element 115, okay? There's this little drift tube that goes on the inside. Element 115, there's these 2 little grooves that it kind of sits in like that. And then you put the cap on like that. He says, as soon as you put the hemisphere on it, he goes, it won't work. You keep it like that, it won't work. He says, as soon as you do that, as long as the emitter, as soon as Barry would rotate the emitter, that turned on. He goes, the stronger you would push, the harder it would push you back. So he says, yeah, it's very likely that it's simply like some type of gravitational field or some other force that we're not aware of. This sits on the floor of the center of the craft. So there's 1, 2, 3 seats, and there's a center area where there's an actual indentation in the floor that's square. That's where this sits. It doesn't lock into place, it just sits there.
Wow.
And from the ceiling, there's a 3-inch diameter pipe you can pull down from the ceiling, and it applies perfectly on top of the reactor. And it's signed by Bob. If you look underneath, it's got Bob's signature on it. Okay.
This is some craziness.
Recently, a Harvard law graduate has came out and said he knows the exact location of an alien base where hundreds of UFOs are stored and that the U.S. government knows about it and has been monitoring it. Daniel Sheehan is a 79-year-old Harvard law graduate, and he gave a speech for this New Paradigm Institute, which is his research institute, and they research UFOs, UAPs, things like that. But he said off the coast of California, there is a small island called Guadalupe, and it's a volcanic island, and that's where the UFOs are living, and that the U.S. government had USS Nimitz stationed there to watch the UFOs go in and out of the water.
What?
Let's dig into that. The USS Nimitz was actually stationed in San Diego right here on this blue dot from 2001 until 2012. Now, that's less than 300 miles away from this supposed alien base. Also, less than 300 feet from where the USS Nimitz was stationed was Santa Catalina Island. Now, this is where the Tic Tac UFO was seen exiting the water by the USS Nimitz. Now, this prompted Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who is retired now, to investigate the oceans for UFOs and UAPs. He had a good buddy of his, basically, scan the ocean floor around Santa Catalina Island to see what he could find. Near Santa Catalina Islands, Tim and his friend found an unnatural ridge in the ocean floor that goes on for over a mile long. Keep in mind, this is less than 300 miles away from the supposed UFO alien base. So we have the volcanic island that supposedly has the alien base underneath it. We have the USS USS Nimitz stationed in San Diego until 2012. Now it is stationed up in Washington, but still on the coast. And then we have Santa Catalina Island, which has been a hotbed for UFOs and for the Tic Tac sighting. All of these are within 300 miles of each other. I don't know. I think Harvard man telling the truth.
Man, what?
This is so wild. So this man called Cliff High developed a software program over 20 years ago that scanned the entire internet and analyzed thematic patterns and language that people were using all over the world to predict the future. Cliff High believed in our individual subconscious intuition, but he also believed in our interconnected consciousness that we all draw from whether we're aware of it or not. So using a technique that he called predictive linguistics, he wrote a program that was able to analyze all the keywords and phrases and thematic patterns and assigned them an emotional value. It then uses a formula to gauge our emotional tensions and write a report on events that will happen in the future. Now, these predictions all came with a precondition that Cliff called temporal markers. And that's kind of like a precursor event, like a trigger event that has to happen before the prediction will come true. So the prediction will not happen until or unless the temporal marker or the trigger event happens first. So what did this program predict? Way back in 2009, this is crazy, honestly. The software program reported of a battle in our skies that got chaotic and out of hand between military jets and UFOs, and also, interestingly, UFOs against other UFOs. And this would mark the beginning of an era where non-human intelligence became a part of our everyday reality. And this was all to take place roughly 39 days after the trigger event happened, so after that temporal marker event. And that temporal marker event was Donald Trump being interviewed by Joe Rogan, which just happened the other day and is already the biggest podcast of all time.
Hold on, man. What? No way.
But let me explain why this is so wild. In 2009, when this prediction was made, Joe Rogan was far from being a household name like he is today. His podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, had its very first episode in December 2009. And back then, it was literally just Joe and a couple of his mates on their webcams in their lounge room. He had hosted Fear Factor, and he was the commentator for the UFC back then, but even then, the UFC was way smaller than what it is today. And Donald Trump being the president was not even in the conversation. In 2009, he was just a real estate mogul and the guy from The Apprentice. This kind of prediction back then was so far out of left field that it was hardly given any further thought by Cliff himself. And now, in 2024, President Donald Trump has just been on the Joe Rogan Experience, the biggest podcast in the world. And at the same time, we have so many military whistleblowers, Harvard lawyers, Stanford scientists, all coming out and saying UFOs and non-human intelligence are very real. And that we, the public, need to be made aware of this before it's potentially catastrophically forced upon us. The world is so crazy right now.
Whoa.
Okay, so who has the imagery?
I can tell you that in the closed setting.
Can you describe what was depicted in the satellite imagery? Just a description.
It was a UAP, ma'am.
That's it? No other description?
The term that the analysts used, they called it the button. It was a disc-shaped object.
Okay, where was it?
I can't tell you that, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss
Okay.
them.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse, okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address that in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs placed on leave and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
Whoa, they get into it.
Mr. Elizondo, does any branch of the United States government or defense contractors possess technology?
Sir, there's documentation that I believe was submitted for the record that was approved for release by the U.S. Pentagon, by the Department of Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review. And it states one of the reasons why my predecessor program, OSAP, was trying to collect material of unknown origin.
In the discussions, it's simply about material, or is there discussion about it was previously testified that there's biologics that were collected. Are you aware of any of that?
I am, sir, aware of the reporting that biologics have been recovered. Again, my focus was more nuts and bolts, looking at the physical aspects of these phenomenon, how they interacted around military equities and nuclear equities. So I'm certainly not a medical expert. I would not be able to probably provide you a whole lot of value in that simply because I don't have the expertise.
But was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes. Yes.
Is it multiple types of creatures, or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Okay. Has anyone made contact?
Sir, I'm sorry, could you specify?
Has there been any, to your knowledge, any communication with a non-human life form?
So definitively, yes, but from a nonverbal meaning, when a Russian reconnaissance aircraft comes into U.S. airspace, we scramble 2 F-22s, and we are certainly communicating intent and capability. I think the same goes with this. We have these things that are being observed over controlled U.S. airspace, and they're not really doing a good job hiding themselves. They're making it pretty obvious they have the ability to even interfere with our nuclear equities, and our nuclear readiness.
They not playing. Aliens don't give a fuck.
A video showing a white orb UFO coming out of the ocean off Kuwait has been found on the US Department of Defense's own network, a congressional hearing was being told last night. The 13-minute-long high-definition color video was of the orb 20 miles off the Kuwait coast and was filmed from a helicopter.
I know this from my own sources. It's not really a secret. Some pretty strange video. There's some stuff in the databanks, let's say, that is very, very hard to explain without getting into areas that traditionally would, people start calling you a tin-foil wearing individual.
And this is a program known as, or at least he says there's a program known as, Immaculate Constellation, a 12-page document purporting to detail a classified UAP crash retrieval program.
10, 20 years from now, I think we would be talking much more openly that this very small percentage of these things really are some kind of either aliens or extra-dimensional, and the rest of it is whether, people who are making stuff up, spy stuff.
There are people, of course, who believe that these are, ulterior dimensional alien species who are coming to visit us, particularly over nuclear sites and high-energy sites, military sites in particular.
I wonder why.
Or it's just stuff that the government cannot explain and is clearly of concern because they've got it on footage of an F-16 fighter jet and they're tracking it, and you can see this stuff moving across the screen and dipping into the sea and then coming out the sea and then shooting off at speeds. It is amazing.
Man, I'm all into this.
We will now recognize Mr. Elizondo for his opening statement.
Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred, and I will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. I believe that America's greatness depends on three elements. A watchful Congress, B, a responsive executive branch, and C, an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted
He going in. He is going in.
criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General, and many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives.
Jeez.
This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong. To fix these problems, I propose three principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection, and for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and the other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. In closing, we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on them, whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon. We don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency. And this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we, as Americans, have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe the world deserves the truth. Thank you, esteemed members of Congress, for your time today. It is profoundly appreciated by many.
I like that dude. He's straightforward.
I believe also that there is a non-human intelligence that's been engaging with this planet for a very long time. Implausible as it may seem, to many, on the evidence that I've been shown by first-hand witnesses, I've been independently apprised of sufficient evidence to reach the conclusion that there is, as confronting as I find myself saying this, there is a very high likelihood that the United States and other nations, particularly China and Russia, have recovered NHI technology, non-human technology, including craft and biologics. Yes, aliens. And there is an ongoing secret Cold War to harness reverse-engineered scientific advancements from that technology. Big call, but what Carl says, what Tim says, I totally agree with it.
This is getting crazy.
What is your best sense of what you saw?
Well, I mean, I think the story's still out there, right? We're seeing these gloat things. We're seeing them go supersonic. We don't know how they're being propelled. We're seeing them at all altitudes. We don't have the answer to that question, Chris. I think we saw something that was not U.S. technology, and that I have no evidence was foreign technology, but I'm still not sure where that leaves us.
And no one can convince you that you didn't see what you think you saw.
It just doesn't make sense. So, well, forgive me for saying it that way, but the way our sensors work is that there are multiple sensors that are looking at different types of energy. And so when one of our sensors sees something, our other sensors go and look at that same spot. And now we have correlation across multiple sensors that we're seeing things. And then we might radio into our wingman, who is maybe 50 miles away, to come look over here, and they can see something on their radar as well. So I never question that, because either the same tools I would use every other day to keep myself alive, keep my colleagues alive, and execute our mission.
Have you ever seen them not on radar, visual?
No, I attempted to. That was kind of status quo for a lot of us for a while, not being able to visually see them. I don't know what it was. We would have our missiles locked onto it, our FLIR system, our radars. But for whatever reason, we couldn't see them when we come up close. At least that was my experience.
The pushback is, well, you only saw it on radar, so we can't know that you detected what you think you detected. Explain to people why that doesn't square with someone who uses the technology as often as you do.
Absolutely. So the radar system is considered our primary tool. As we fly around, it enables us to look at very large swaths of airspace. These exact numbers, of course, are classified. And it's also what guides our weapon systems, our missiles. It's what cues our other sensors. It allows us to scan the ground and pick targets out. It does a lot of different things. And we use it on every flight. We fly next to other aircraft in the cloud, utilizing the radar. We put bombs in the windows with our radar. We can do all sorts of things. So it's our primary tool, and we have the utmost trust in it. And when there are faults in it, they are pretty easily detectable. And of course, that was our assumption at first. But having that type of data is extremely high quality data that is correlated across multiple sensors and multiple platforms. If I had just seen it with my eyes, I think we'd probably be having the opposite conversation, where people would say, well, if you only saw it with your eyes, you were probably fooled and we don't have enough information. We don't have enough data. Now we have the data. Granted, it's not out in the public.
It's not out in the public.
How frequently are UAP sightings over military installations? And secondly, I suppose hypothetically, you could have incursions over just, say, regular airports. Is it obvious these incursions are more likely over military facilities than just a random airport out there?
Yes, sir. There's definitely enough data to suggest that there is certainly some sort of relationship between sensitive U.S.
I wonder why.
Military installations, also some of our nuclear equities, and also some of our Department of Energy sites. There is a long historical record that some of your colleagues may have, documentation that demonstrates this. This is not a new trend. This has been going on for for decades, and that information's been obfuscated, unfortunately, from folks like you in this committee. And I think that's problematic because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a significant situation here. We have something that can enter into U.S. airspace completely with no attribution.
And how long has this been going on?
Sir, decades, and there's information that will hopefully be entered into the record.
Can you think of any possible reason why they can't release any information they have on something, say, 15 or 20 years old?
Sir, if I could echo my colleague here, Admiral Gallaudet, I think one of the big issues that we have in the intelligence community, Department of Defense, is we don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities or weaknesses in our national defense systems or on intelligence collection platforms. Therefore, when you have a conversation where you address a problem for which there is no solution, it makes that a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
He on point, man.
Breaking news, we just heard that the U.S. nuclear submarine fleet is being shadowed by UAPs, aka UFOs. That's what reportedly former U.S. Navy Admiral Kim Gallaudet will be testifying about on Wednesday at the House of Representatives Oversight Committee.
After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP.
Whoa.
The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned base.
In previous hearings, we've seen former U.S. Navy and Air Force pilots testifying about UAPs, but what does a former U.S. Navy admiral has to say about the UAP phenomenon? Reports indicate that parts of the former U.S. Navy admiral's testimony would be about underwater UAPs shadowing the U.S. nuclear submarine fleet.
They hook the diver up on the winch and they're lowering him in, and as he's looking down, he sees this big, massive, he goes, it's not a submarine. He's seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. This big object, kind of circular, he says, is coming up from the depths, and he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up, and the diver's like a few feet from the water. So they reverse the winch, and the diver's thinking, what the hell's going on? And he's getting pulled up, and all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths, and they never recovered the torpedo.
Jesus.
And this happened in the late 90s.
Also among people who will be testifying on Wednesday, a former NASA administrator, Mr. Michael Gold. So far, NASA has kept it very low-key on the UAP debate, but depending on what Mr. Gold will be revealing tomorrow at the testimony, the agency might be forced to release any kind of evidence and document they have on UAP sightings.
This stuff is so interesting.
As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena.
There are calls for the US government to be more transparent about UFO sightings. Two former Navy pilots and a former intelligence officer have testified to a US Congress committee warning UFOs are a national security threat.
Do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72.
So if that was to reverse engineer these UAPs, a person couldn't even be inside of it because it's too fast. Like your body would disintegrate. At least that's what I'm gathering from what they're saying.
10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report,
but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic.
Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Right. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Last week, White House NSC spokesman John Kirby stated that UAPs are having an impact on our training ranges and need to be treated as a legitimate issue. Do you concur with his statements? That's for each of you.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Right now, we need a system where pilots can report without fear of losing their jobs. There's a fear that the stigma associated with this topic is going to lead to professional repercussions, either through management or perhaps through their yearly physical check.
That's crazy. They can't even report stuff without...
So history has recorded the first big UFO sighting in the United States is 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, very famously right outside Roswell. But actually, there was, in some sense, a bigger and more significant event sighting 2 years before, also in New Mexico, at exactly the moment the U.S. government was detonating the first atomic weapon, shortly thereafter used in Japan. And witnesses on the ground saw some kind of object shaped like an avocado, they said, crash land. It was inspected by a lot of locals. There were beings inside, they said, and it was carted away by the U.S. government. Now, people don't want to be called crazy, so no one said too much about it for quite some years, but people within the U.S. government believe it's true, and they believe it so strongly that now, as of this week, the Defense Department's annual spending bill will require, as per Congress, the Pentagon to go back and investigate what really happened. Nick Pope is a former UK Ministry of Defense coming on. So this is a story that most, I think, Americans are not even aware of, but clearly people within the U.S. government believe it's real, or they wouldn't have attached this to a spending bill, correct?
Correct, yes. This is being called the Roswell before Roswell. And you're right, people with some knowledge of these intelligence programs who've been briefing Congress about this made sure that this was put into the legislation. And it's one of many UFO provisions in the new defense bill. The DoD must provide Congress with a list of everything they've found out about this specific incident, but all other incidents and programs from January 1st, 1945 onwards. And anyone involved in these programs or with information about it will be released from their secrecy oaths and non-disclosure agreements, and they'll be able to testify to Congress about this.
So here we have the nuclear connection again. This was around the first detonation in human history of a nuclear device. Subsequent to that, you've had UFO sightings at nuclear missile bases, around nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered submarines. There's clearly some nuclear, I mean, I don't pretend to understand, but nuclear has some connection to these sightings, no?
Right.
That seems to be the case. And again, Congress is demanding answers on this. We had the latest report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence last week. That highlighted the fact that there were several hundred more sightings being investigated, military sightings, than we'd heard of before. Talked about unusual flight characteristics and performance parameters of this. And yeah, we must get to the bottom of this UFO and nuclear connection.
Yeah. I mean, I would think. It feels like we're getting closer. I hope.
Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, There were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
All right, guys, that was another TikTok compilation. That, for me, I'm going to say for me, was probably the most interesting video I've seen out of all the TikTok compilations. I'm fascinated about the whole alien thing and it being a conspiracy theory. Then all of a sudden, all of this stuff is coming out at one time. I think for me, I just started getting into this information or started hearing more about it within the last couple years. So this right here is just super fascinating. And for them to say they not coming even from outer space, they coming from the ocean. And they around the nuclear energy. So much so that these pilots are talking about UAPs in their morning meetings before they go out and do what they do. And the fact that they talking about, you're gonna have to go back to the 1930s and talk about everything that's been discussed before. People gonna be able to speak. They taking off the NDAs. This is interesting. If you made it this far, drop real one for real in the comments, man, for real. But I'm here for this. Also, I got a TikTok playlist, man. If you want to, go binge watch, chill, enjoy. This is interesting. Till next time, self-love and positivity, Fire Squad. I got you and you know it.